Live streaming is on.
All right, so this time, so we haven't met last week. I didn't really have time last time, so and there isn't much to discuss nowadays. Well, at least with the RFC open now. But so one of the things now, the RFC was put into kind of shepherd searching mode, and I know that Robert originally said he would be part of the shepherd team, but I know that Robert has doesn't have a lot of time right now. So how is that looking, Robert? Do you still want to be part of the shepherd team there?
Um, I could do it if it's like necessary, but I'd be like a token shepherd. That's just how I feel, at least. Because I'm already part. I've been part of the discussion for all this time. I have my own opinions and biases that closely match the teams by now. So I think it would be more valuable to have more external shepherds, but if necessary, I can fill the gap.
Yeah, well, yeah, right. I mentioned this also before. The author of the RC, which would be me in this case, isn't part of the shepherd team itself, and
Yeah.
it would be good to at least have one person of this team in the shepherd team. And you would be the best one since you do have you did contribute the most extra parts to the RFC.
I guess I did. Yeah.
Yeah. So, well, you said, well, I'm not sure. It would be good to have like a yes or no. And if yes, you can write a nomination in the
I
RFC.
think my interpretation of Shepard might have been wrong then. And in that case, I think I should say yes. So let's make it a yes.
Is the
Let's make it
issue
a
whether
yes.
someone else from this team wants to do it?
Well, Robert already said yes,
Okay,
although it was barely audible.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
So can we just confirm that's a yes then?
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
All right, awesome. Yeah, but yeah, RFC Shepherds, it is honestly the RFC README. I mean, goes into all of that, but it's not super clear. Yeah, people who are familiar with components touched by the RFC, the author cannot be part of the shepherd team. At most, half of the shepherd team. Oh, that's unrelated. Yeah, I think it's okay. But yeah, we do not. I don't think we want more than one member of this team in the shepherd team.
Yeah.
All right, let me do here. All right. Then there are some more. Other than that, I don't think there's much to discuss on the RC itself. So the next kind of thing is just the next item to work on and kind of more meta things about maybe restructuring the team a bit or finding working groups. And last time, Robert, you also said that you might have time to write a kind of discourse post for assembling a working group.
Yeah, I haven't finished that draft yet. I've had a couple of days off and I didn't manage to squeeze it in.
Is there a draft of a draft already? Can you share that and we can work on that together maybe?
I think maybe one of the issues is a good start, but I'm afraid not actually. No.
Yeah, and there also has been some new issues have been opened. Oh yeah, you also opened one just 4 hours ago. the name thing.
Yeah, that's a small one that came up in the clean attributes PR that I made. It's sort of preparing the ground for anything package related, really. So clean attributes is about not forwarding all of your derivation inputs to the package attribute set. So you get a separation between what's like an implementation detail and what's supposed to be used by consumers of your package. That's what clean adders is about. And main, that's just a small aspect of that. That sort of fits in.
Yeah. I would say this might be part of like a bigger change where we move away from the stdinf.make derivation. And if we
Yeah.
were to design our own builder, that would not expose all of them by default. Yeah, that's also something, an improvement that could be done.
Is the current, I guess, recommended pattern for this type of attribute to use pass-through?
Which type of attribute?
So let's say, like, yeah, if you have an implementation detail attribute that you don't want to actually be exposed in the builder environment, is that, aside from maybe a let block above?
Well, so this is about attributes that influence the build, but that you don't want in the result. So like build inputs, for example, like build inputs.
Oh, got it.
But pass through is still the answer, though. If there is something you do want to expose on the output attribute set, you should do it with pass through.
Yeah, that you didn't want to have actually be in the build environment.
No, well, that's I mean,
well,
if
there
there's
is
something you want to be in the build environment and the result, you would put it in both. I think you would put in pass through and not pass through.
Well, there is.
Yeah, but it's not really solved by this PR. There's not like a concept of a local variable that's not part of either the attribute set result or the builder.
Gotcha. Yeah, I was trying to, I guess, wrap my head around.
But that is a
actual
thing
goal
that
is.
comes up sometimes. Yeah.
Okay, so is this
But
then
just-
like if you didn't? So I guess a clean attribute is like it doesn't actually it's not exposed within the derivations builder, but it is exposed in the output, or
Yeah. So when you enable clean attributes,
Mhm.
what happens is that all of the make derivation arguments, they do get passed to the build environment as before.
Mhm.
They just don't end up in the attribute set that's returned by make derivation. So, for instance,
got it. Yeah.
yeah,
Okay.
for example, like source, it's passed to the builder, but it's not part of the package. So you cannot do like hello.source
Mhm.
unless you also expose it explicitly through something like pass-through.
Gotcha.
But doesn't this still
Instead of
exist?
opt-out.
Doesn't DRV args still exist? Or DRV adders?
It's DRV adders, and with clean adders, that actually changes to hello.internals.
Internals.
Yeah, that one still
I
exists.
see. Okay, but then it's clearly marked as internal.
Yep.
Okay,
Cool.
Sounds good. Yeah, but I do. I wonder if we should like go into more detail for this specific PR, or if we should because last time we talked about this module, this packages as modules idea, where we can integrate a module system or try to integrate a module system deeper into Nixpkgs as the next idea. And I think that's like at least investigating that option is a really good idea. And I think that it would be useful for like to build a working group for that idea.
Put me on that.
Oh yeah, I guess we can.
Yeah, I mean, I've got the whole new draft, all the node stuff I did is all using modules. And it's very, I think, very similar to the DRV parts work that has been done.
Nice, sounds good. And yeah, well, I guess I'm just gonna write me down 2 here, but it would be. But yeah, does anyone from this team also have time to look into that, or well, especially time, but also interest?
I have probably more interest than time.
Yeah. I think the
Yeah, same.
time is important. Yeah. All right, so let's try to find community members and try to find at least one or 2 more for this.
We'll definitely invite Dave,
Dave. Yeah.
because he's written DRV parts, which is an experimentation in this area, and he uses it for Dreams, or he's planning to use it for that.
Yeah,
So
that's a good idea.
He knows probably more than I do.
Yep,
I
that's
don't know,
good.
Robert. You're being kind of modest.
Do we have another suggestion for? Is there anyone that has done any? Well, I know, except in this team that who has done anything relevant for this kind of idea. There's
Me and Rob and Dave are the only ones I can think of, other than maybe like Sandro. But
there might be. Was it NBP? I'm going to share my screen here again.
Yeah,
NBP, who wrote the original module system.
oh well, it's probably a good person to ask.
But I'm not sure how interested he is in like doing this. But we can ask. Let's ask.
Well,
I think he's
so
sort of
wrote
less involved in
SOS,
general, but
which is also an attempt to solve some of these problems.
But I think quite
With a slightly larger scope, not just packages, but package sets as well.
Well,
So
what
if we
did
can
you
get all of
talk
them,
about?
that'd be great.
Well, what did you say was that effort?
SOS, it's an RFC.
Oh, the SOS. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think the RFC, this RFC is only about kind of I think it only does something internally in Nixpkgs. It doesn't kind of make that also work outside of Nixpkgs, as far as I know.
I'd be interested to see that. I think me and Dave, and I probably DRV parts have all done. The first thing you hit is like the override and the override adders implementation, and I do want to put everyone side by side and just see.
Yeah. And otherwise, so let's. I mean, we could write discourse post, just kind of. Well, do we exactly know what the problem even is? Do we even have an issue in the Nixpkgs architecture issue list here that describes this? I don't think we actually have one of those. But we should. I think the most important thing is to come up with a problem description first, and what problems we intend to solve with this solution. Well, we don't know the solution exactly yet, but
Yeah, I mean, I can take a crack at writing a problem description. I guess my starting point would be probably improving the override system or making it more user-friendly, more readable, more transparent, that kind of thing.
yeah, that sounds great. I would also be interested in like pairing on that. Do you have time after this meeting?
I've got this whole week off actually.
Oh my, whole week for writing Nix.
That's
Nice.
right. I'm just plenty of time.
Awesome. So let's do this after this meeting then, and just
Cool.
kind of try to write the problem description, open an issue in the Nixpkgs architecture repository. I'm gonna write this down in action items here, and Kotlin pairing up for writing issue description. And if we have time, we could also try to work on the workgroup assembly discourse post. Tom, do you want to discuss something here as well?
Yeah. So, I mean, partly relevant here is there's a change to basically say, hey, let's bring in and vendor all the cargo locks into Nix packages. This has, I mean, this is kind of it's a fairly big change of some sign, depending on how you look at it, but it's the sort of thing that we should probably understand or weigh in on. And so I'm bringing it up for discussion. I was also asked to bring it up for discussion for the team, so I am doing so.
I see.
And I don't know if this was visible or apparent, or if anyone's like, if the right people have looked at or reviewed it. So this is kind of bring it to attention. Basically, what's happening here is some of the FOD hashes are going to be changing, and so with the new version of Rust. And if you want to continue work, there are some options. So this is doing not just the updating of those FOD hashes, but simultaneously saying, well, what another way to solve the problem is to just vendor in the relevant cargo lock from upstream into Nix packages itself. That is an approach, and the question, and while Rust is probably the best candidate for this sort of a thing compared to other package managers, it is still something that we should probably be aware of and weigh in on.
So if the package lock is like available on a remote, is including that lock in Nix packages an optimization, or is this?
It allows you to
avoid,
avoid IFD.
Gotcha. Yeah. Okay.
Because so that's one kind of reason for it.
Yeah, that makes sense.
It also allows you to create finer grained derivations for each of the individual dependencies.
Yeah,
so there are benefits to do so.
For sure. Yeah. I think I was forgetting the you have to use IFT in Nix packages to get externals.
Yeah.
But it does create this awkward situation of, well, now we have vendored cargo locks from upstream in Nix packages, which does seem a little bit odd.
I
But we have
appreciate the
precedent for
shout out to RFC92.
There, yep, that is that got included.
I think this is good. I mean, the point of distributions is to choose what the dependencies are. That's the whole point. And if you include the lock file, then you're choosing what the dependencies are. I could easily imagine. I mean, we sort of like normally we try to have consistent libraries for like C things, and then Rust was sort of trying to push everyone in the kind of fuck it direction, just let every package resolve its own dependencies. And this allows us to explore various middle grounds. And I think that's good. On one hand, there's no reason to force everything you use. It's a private EXE's dependencies are private dependencies, and there's no reason those have to be the same across everything in your system. But also, it's nice to imagine some future world where everything isn't just like a bunch of completely independent executables, and other things are possible. List machine, spooky magic, DL open hell, other worlds. So this keeps the door open to those things too. So I like this. Even if we had 92, I would not even necessarily say don't vendor it.
Yeah, I'm also thumbs up on this. I mean, this also right, isn't the problem as well? I'm not sure if this has been mentioned already, that these cargo SHA-256 are just kind of impure to some degree, and you need to actually build the derivation to figure out the hash.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's FOD. So you have a fixed output derivation, and but you have to do a dry run failure to get the correct hash to store it.
Oh yeah, and this gets rid of that, and that's just great in my opinion. So I'm
What I'm
I'm
confused about
not.
is that how, in what sense does it get rid of that? We're replacing, okay, a hash with essentially the contents of that hash represents.
Yeah, the it's right. It's kind of partitioning, kind of decomposing the larger hash into a lot smaller hashes. But the smaller hashes are kind of constant. Like you have these versioned URLs that will likely never change unless the server does something weird. Like in the log file, you have these very specific URLs with versions and hashes.
Yeah,
These are
I think that
constant; they
you're.
won't change.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
think
what's
my understanding
okay.
is what you're doing is like taking these, which are currently FOD with a dry run failure, and you're turning them into like properly input addressed builds by subbing the sources. Is my understanding.
By subbing the sources,
So like,
by
okay, so
like
right
moving the
now,
cargo log file into Nixpkgs, right?
right. So yeah, like right now, a way a lot of these like X to Nix tools work is what they do is they'll do a dry run failure and allow some internal package manager to go and fetch a ton of stuff. You let it fail, and then you do one giant fixed output derivation for what the thing is going to produce. You can get fine grain and try to dial it in more, but that's like generally the approach they do. The approach of like actually parsing a lock is to recycle lock file entries that like deal with the actual like distributed sources or the distributed modules that they actually consume, and you pull those in up front. And then past that, your actual build phase is input addressed rather than fixed output.
Yeah.
Also, I think there's a general principle we don't want to be doing computation in fixed output derivations. The thing when you do the work here, the thing you're left up with is simple fetches. Whereas if you're doing the lock, if you're building a vendoring, then you're doing work and the thing changes. When cargo changes, which was the issue that brought this up, it's just it's not good to have this computation subject to change, spooky black magic inside a fixed output derivation.
Yeah. In fairness to people that use that method, it is a million times easier than like I understand why people do it, and I think it definitely it makes sense. But yeah, I mean, if you have the ability to parse a lock file and you can like actually feed the internal build tooling those same sources or those same distributed tarballs, it's definitely worth doing.
Yeah. And there is even this issue by Ilka, which I mean is a bit restrictive, but I agree with it. It's about just not allowing fixed output derivations for arbitrary things. Like you need to use like a built-in fetcher that then guarantees that no computation is done. This way, things like cargo SHA-256 won't be possible anymore. Which, I mean, just removing a feature isn't the way to fix a problem. Some solution still needs to exist. But yeah, this kind of also agrees with the notion of computation is bad in fixed output derivations. Yeah, and so I think.
So my other issue though is that here we are solving kind of there's a time limitation for the Rust effort, right? So one is that it's simply because upstream is changing something with Rust 1.68. We're doing kind of a big change that is motivated by a change upstream, but it's doing far more than it needs to. So the really all we need to do is update all the FOD hashes. We don't have to update all the FOD hashes by replacing them with the cargo lock. That's an independent problem that we might choose to do, but we shouldn't be forced to do both things at once. And then the next question is going to be, well, okay, this we implement this, but do we implement this for all of our node packages? Do we implement this for all of our Python stuff? Do we implement this for at some point the question is going to be, are we just going to be a big repository of lock files of everything? And this can very, very quickly get out of hand. And so this requires a policy. This requires hopefully someone who thinks about Nixpkgs at a larger scale and makes decisions. And that seems to be what the role of this team is.
I definitely agree that this does sound like I think do one PR where you update the FODs, and the other stuff should not be getting smuggled in with the necessary change.
I feel like like someone has kind of went to the effort of implementing this in kind of better way, and it has already kind of large scale approval. Like there's a lot of loves here. A lot of people don't like the hashes, and so I don't see an immediate problem with just accepting this. I don't see a problem with this approach, and then I'm asking like, is there any benefit of going through this extra step, or is it just more work for the people? And in the end, we end up with, I don't know, maybe this PR, maybe this
They
timing is what the PR needs to succeed and get motivated enough.
Gotcha.
the PR did mention some reasons that other lock files are different. So I think we can still have a separate discussion about the other languages and the bigger picture. And this doesn't need to be like a precedent that forces our hand.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, but
Yeah, so we're
whenever...
not making the decision for every package set out there.
Okay.
Only in this specific case, it seems like the right thing to do.
Whenever it's time to talk about the node package set, you know who to come to.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
So, Alex, you said you think like a separate PR for the hash update would also be.
I would say it depends like how far along this tool is, and I guess kind of like if the tooling is tested and works, and like this is like low risk, and there's kind of like you know, I guess if it's like done and it's like tested and good to go, I say, you know, I think it's maybe fine to just not knock both out at the same time. But I would say kind of like in general, I think it's best to like solve a problem and add a new feature like in separate PRs just to avoid kind of smuggling or
Yeah,
Like,
agreed.
for
So,
example,
like
like there's consequences here that I don't know are being fully looked at. Like this is a size increase, right? There's a communication problem of like what is the best practice for how to do package updates into Nix packages, right? There's questions about like so it seems like we're doing like any sort of work that's required to go get the cargo lock could also equivalently and much simply just update the hash. Right, in terms of so the question of tooling is like, yeah, the far simpler tooling is right now tooling is replacing a cargo hash, so it understands and parses it and figures it out, and it replaces it with /cargo lock and then copies files in. That equivalent work is replace it with the newly updated hash. So now, if we think that the size cost and the change in policy cost is low, right, then that's fine. But I think we should be aware that this does change how Nix packages functions.
Yeah, I think the cost is low. Like I see this as a general improvement. I think the previous way of specifying the hash and based on the computation is just wrong to some degree. And because it was wrong, it would require updates now. And the Rust might do a change like that in the future again, at which point the hash would have to be updated yet again. This to me seems like a proper fix to the problem, whereas the other thing is just a workaround. And the size increase, that's also, so that's 13 megabytes to the Reaper size, but this is then distributed over. Actually, I think the size of Git. Maybe we should look at the size of this in relation to the entirety of Nix packages. Because I think it might be like 1 gigabyte in that region, the entirety of Nix packages. So that is like 3%. Although you can diff these files and they won't require 30 megabytes every like Nix release.
It's 280 on my disk when I look just at the usage for PKGs, which I think is, well, all the package apart, right?
250 megabytes for
280
for what exactly?
for the unpacked files in PKGs, the work tree.
And does that include all the history as well? I thought I had.
Does not include history.
So if someone is doing, let's say, a tarball download, right? Because normally people should be doing full clones, right? So this is actually, it's a significant percentage of repo size without history. Now, obviously, with repo history, any addition is going to be small because most of it's history and churn and not applicable. So the
Right.
comparison is to a shallow clone. That's what the comparison needs to be against.
Yeah. Or tarball export.
Right. And this is where it becomes like, again, Rust, I will admit Rust is the best example of this. But like, what's next? Do we do go mod, go sums? Do we do packages, JSON locks? Do we like, again, like this can very quickly get out of hand. Right. So again, it's an incremental thing.
What's
maybe-
the earliest supported release of Nix and Nix packages right now?
Like 2.2 or something. Minver 2.3.
Okay, 2.3. Did that have fetch URL with SHA?
I think that existed for always.
If you can do fetch URL with a SHA, you don't have. You can pull these externally without IFD.
Oh, but then you increase the eval time, which is.
Well, yeah. Oh, which way you want to do it?
Yeah, but like fetching code that needs to be evaluated, like Nix packages should contain all the code to evaluate the derivations. It shouldn't have to fetch extra stuff, and that's a policy fairly well maintained in Nix packages.
Okay.
Could even be that Hydra disallows fetching things at eval time entirely. Yeah, but that's true. This might be pretty significant.
I mean,
how about
right
we
now,
ask the
right now
user
the
to
size
like
is about 80 megabytes. So we're talking about for the entire Nix packages, like on disk, just
without the Git history.
Obviously without Git history. Because then at that point we're talking gigs. But like, then when you have it compressed, it can get down to about 30, depending on which compression method you use. Right? It's in the 30 and 32s recently. So we're talking about a like 1/3, a 33%, or something like that. I don't know. Where's the thing? No, actually more than that. This is even closer to 50. This is like a 50% size increase in Nix packages. This is not a trivial amount, right?
Okay, fair. That is pretty big.
And that's why I raise it, right? It's not like, again, it is compelling, and there are benefits to do so, but we need to consider that this is also only one part of Nix packages, the Rust portion. Rust portion now taking up a massive chunk of, we'll call it our bandwidth budget, or our processing budget, or our disk budget, wherever our budget is. This is pretty big. It's a very sizable land grab.
That is true.
Why
So,
Rusting so many dependencies?
I mean, I love Rust and all, but this is why we have to weigh this cost. Like, this is a cost that everyone who doesn't even use Rust will have to pay.
So how about my suggestion would be let's ask the author or the relevant people to analyze this cost increase more, to really go like it increases 50% for a tarball download, and how much does it increase for your local repository size. Also, if you include history, well, no, history doesn't really matter that much.
Well, but think about, okay, so our history size is another consideration. Because now you're doing large changes,
Right.
so the locks changing mean whatever our history size is will only the rate of increase of our history size will go up. Because
Right.
now
In the
you're
end,
not
it's
just changing a hash, you're changing a lock file. That's another
right. In the
consideration.
end, a lot of small increases add up over time as well. And
Exactly. So
also
that means is now
of evil
we've
time.
dug ourselves into a bigger hole in the future that like a full clone is now 10 gigs, not 2, right? Or whatever the numbers are, right? It's very easy to push off a cost that is for the future and accept it today.
Yeah.
And put this
Can
to the
we?
deck.
I can, like, on top of my head, I could think of like other approaches to kind of fix this. Like one example would be, what if we had a kind of separate repository where all the log files are committed, and that can contain all of the history, and then we fetch that using one of those eval time fetchers in Nixpkgs, but we limit it to only like these large first party repositories, these separate ones, to not make it go out of hand or something like this. Maybe other options just in general, and this would be one of them, should be investigated as well. Like, what if, assume every package manager works like this, that's our ideal end state. How can we make it work in that way? We can't do that all in Nixpkgs itself.
You can, now you couldn't do it with Legacy Nix. You could, what do you call it? The fetcher cache, you could populate that. Like, you could distribute a SQLite DB that popped it, but that would only work with newer versions, and that's kind of fraught, actually, because the format changes quite a bit.
Isn't this very similar to the stupid simple IFD thing, John?
Yeah, the RFC 109 that needs attention. Yeah, there's a lot like that. So maybe if this is too hard, maybe we can say. I mean, the size thing did kind of convince me that it is a lot to smuggle in. We could say that we like it, but it seems to be kind of fall under this umbrella. Even though it's not generated code, it's still like, well, the lock file is itself generated by the solver.
It's non-human written code.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, I kind of like this idea of a first party repository that's separate from Nixpkgs, where maybe all of the generated code lives, and Nixpkgs itself would only be human written. Maybe there's something there, but yeah, RC 109, I guess, should also be considered. So yeah, I'm also convinced that, at least for now, the RFC or the PR here isn't specific enough about how much it actually increases repository size. And this doesn't look like a lot, but it is actually a lot. And I would like to see this in better relation.
Could you distribute a compressed tarball and use no, because then you have to use the fetcher. No.
Well, it's fetcher, whether it's a Git repo or not, like.
Yeah. I'm trying to brainstorm, but yeah, I keep hitting the.
But yeah, I think let's end the discussion on this issue. I think we have reached somewhat of a decision that it is actually too much, and nobody seems to.
Could we maybe make the recommendation for now to just update the FODs and treat the treat this other approach as a separate issue? Yeah, because I mean, I know this is. I understand that this is something they're going to have to solve rather quickly.
Yeah, right. Since if it was like a no-brainer, I'd say yes. But since it does add a lot of repository size. I think we shouldn't rush the decision. And yes, just updating hashes to me sounds like the better approach then. Do we have a agreement on that? So only update the cargo SHA-256 hashes for now. Do we have the general idea written down here? Yeah, size increase is too much. Should be thought. Should be
Considered.
thought about more. Or, yeah, thought about more. Yeah. Any voices against this? All right. No. Sounds good then. I do wonder, so kind of a meta issue here. Like, should we have a time in the meeting for smaller issues? So like Nixpkgs pull requests that might come up that involve that the Nixpkgs architecture team should make a decision about, like the one we just had. And this could be like maybe at the start of the meeting or at the end of the meeting. Just like maybe just a 15-minute time block or 20 minutes, 30 minutes. I'd say 15 minutes.
That grew quickly.
Well, we did say that the meeting would be half an hour at
Yeah,
minimum, and so
Yeah, so
15
there
minutes.
are often issues that come up that are this sort of like, and then maybe it's limited to a particular package set or this sort of kind of larger scale question. And I think it is appropriate for us to at least go over it and sometimes, if it's appropriate, weigh in on it. Now, the problem then becomes those very easily become a distraction. And if I could channel Valentine for a little bit, it means we're not focusing on one problem and hitting them and getting through them in a very regular fashion.
Yes. Right, but on the other hand, it is also it should be our duty to make decisions over these smaller issues as they come up.
I believe so.
We
Yes.
could maybe, how about we try it for some time and see how that works? So maybe we could even limit it to like 10 minutes. And after 10 minutes, I'm going to be the time enforcer. I'm just going to say we have to move on now. And if there's more thing, we can discuss this next time. But 10 minutes is a very short time for discussion. So alternatively, we could,
We may also consider working groups, right? The working group idea has been brought up. We may consider the team to be responsible for monitoring the working groups and the projects and Nixpkgs PRs, and move all of the actual work, so to speak, move that into working groups.
I think it's actually good. It's very hard to talk about the big issues and little issues. That's what I think based on next team meetings, but they're both important.
So just, I think, so Robert, you said to have build more working groups, essentially?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not sure if there need to be more, but if we need more of them, because I think the working group should be focused on projects. Maybe we call them project groups, and then we have a team meeting that covers the project groups and the Nixpkgs PRs.
Also, a separate meeting for these project working groups.
I think so, yeah.
Okay, so can I write this down as have a separate meeting to discuss issues, peers from working groups or project groups? that I do like that idea. It would really mean we don't have to like sacrifice one meeting's time for the other. And yeah. So does it sound good? Do most people here have time for another meeting? And honestly, a lot of teams, well, the documentation team as well now, and the next team already has working meetings like once a week, 2 hours, in addition to the kind of review meeting, which seems to be working great for them. And maybe we should also do that in the future. But more meetings does mean we have less time for other things, and my calendar is slowly filling up with meetings. But I do have time for another, let's say, half an hour meeting, just to discuss these kinds of things. How does it look for all of you?
Yeah, either having time set aside, or to just say that, hey, a good half hour of this one is like straight up just doing the work, makes it a lot more productive and provides kind of a sense of forward progress.
What do you mean by doing the work? Because
So
kind of,
having like turning a portion of the meeting into a working meeting is another way of doing it. To say, look, hey, we'll do discussions and triage for half an hour, and then actually start doing, whatever it is that we've put onto our action items. Like an example here would be, hey, we talked about pairing this to write this and pairing that to write that, or drafting this. We could just literally sit down and start doing it rather than talking about doing it.
Yeah, this seems like a separate issue that separate topic than the kind of issue PR project groups thing, where because that's also needed, but also we also need to do work for the bigger issues. So like we have bigger issues and the Monday meeting, and you're suggesting do the work
Okay,
after.
I'll
do some work
I'll just say
afterwards.
it's helpful to have a devoted time to do work rather than talk. That's all I was trying to say. That's it.
Yeah, okay. Just trying to make it a bit more concrete. Good to have a dedicated. Yeah. So, well, so I do not want to. So we shouldn't work on these smaller issues. This team should make. I think it's okay for this team to make decisions over smaller issues, because ideally we'd be the team that has the necessary context and enough people to kind of form a consensus over whether these smaller peers in Nixpkgs should get merged. But we shouldn't do the actual work for them. And so, but I do like the idea of doing actual work for things like using the module system for packages and things like that. And I think we can do that after this meeting. So as we just said earlier. And okay, we don't have anyone disagreeing, so that sounds good. But for these smaller issues, to make decisions over this, I do like the idea of having a separate meeting, and I would like to schedule that. And yeah, well, Alex, do you have time to meet another time? Just gonna go the rounds. Tom, what about you? Could we? Is your calendar somewhat free?
No.
Yeah, I guess so.
You would do this starting now, you're saying?
Yeah, like just to have separate time to discuss these smaller issues. And we might also we probably need some boards. It's a possibility.
Yeah, I'd say possible. If it goes into like 11:30, that might
11:30
half the time, let's say. Or half an hour past the scheduled time, which we've already hit.
Yeah, well, but as I just said, I don't really want to. Like, if we have a work meeting for work in this group, it would probably be after the main meeting, as you suggested. But that doesn't really include the kind of smaller issues. Just to not get distracted. Yeah. What about you, Robert? What do you think of this? Would you have time?
So my idea was basically to have one distracted meeting and then focused meetings for whoever is participating in the project, which I think is a bit different from what we're discussing now. But yeah, I think I can free up half an hour somewhere. If that means that we're more effective as a team, I think that's probably worth it. So yeah.
All right. So a distracted meeting for the smaller issues, and sorry, I'm gonna. My mind
Yeah,
is
so
blank
for
right now.
smaller issues and monitoring the projects.
Monitoring the.
So we're doing
Oh,
concurrent
yeah.
projects now, it seems, right? Because we're still working on the simple package
Yeah.
background. And we're also going to do the modular package construction thing.
Yes.
So that's
that
two
would be the.
projects. And we can, like, I think, combine it into the meeting where we discuss the smaller issues, and then have like proper focused meetings for each of the working groups, for each of the projects.
I see. Okay.
And then that allows some people to not participate in all of the meetings as well. I think that's important for efficiency, that if you're interested in only part of the things, then that's where you participate.
Yeah.
For example, David is probably not interested in the package path stuff, or for that matter, the nitty-gritty Nixpkgs things that we do.
Okay, that sounds good to me. I like that idea. So something like this, and I mean, then it makes most sense to keep the current spot we have for this meeting for this distracted meeting, where we discuss the progress on all of the projects.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. Yeah.
Okay, that sounds good. Tom, does that also sound good to you? All right, we have a thumbs up. Nice. Okay, so we are just about out of time. We kind of talk about these projects, but we haven't really individualized these projects for now. They're all kind of here. We are thinking about, so after this, I'm gonna pair with Alex on the modules for packages thing, just kind of write down problem description, solution, idea. And then we might also get to the discourse post for building a working group. For the RC 140, I don't think a work meeting is needed right now. There's no, honestly, no, there is a meeting needed, but it's mostly about the implementation of the RC. I'm gonna think about that. Maybe I can schedule something using with the people that are interested in implementing this. Have a regular call there. Work calls on the tooling. I'm gonna put this down here. Schedule meeting for RC tooling work. And then, right, we're going to parent this. And the smaller issues as they come up, I think in the future it would be good to have like a board somewhere where people can like kind of request our time to look into some issue, where they can say, oh, this issue, we want the architecture team to look at this and give their input. And then we can, it would somehow propagate into the meeting on Monday. All right, but yeah, that sounds good. So yeah, is there anything else someone wants to say, or does this plan sound good?
So we're still doing one meeting because the Robert delegation approach, right?
Yes.
Oh, excellent.
All right, then I think let's end it for today. I think this works out pretty well. But yeah, then see you again next week.